Hello, everyone. This is Phil Johnson, and with me today is Sherry Welsh of SherryWelsh.com. Sherry's a leadership coach who works with professionals, both with individuals privately and with groups within companies. You can get a copy of Sherry's book, Slowing Down: Unexpected Ways to Thrive as a Female Leader, from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or any other book retailer. Sherry, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Sherry, in our last podcast, having talked about the 7 levels of energy leadership and having seen that optimally we would spend a lot of our time in levels 5 and 6 as a true partner or as a visionary, it's great to know that, but in our daily life we find that a lot of times we don't stay there. And we spent our last podcast talking about 4 categories of barriers that keep us from staying in levels 5 and 6. Assumptions, beliefs, stories that we tell ourselves in our head, and the inner gremlin or the inner critic. And we saw how those 4 categories of things, our assumptions, beliefs, stories, or our inner critic, knock us out of level 5 or 6 down to level 1, the victim energy, where we're not necessarily feeling sorry for ourselves, but we're not doing anything. We're not taking any action because of what we believe or are assuming. Or they put us in level 2, our fighter energy, where we're going into different situations in our professional or personal life on edge and ready to battle because of what we believe or what we're assuming. Now, you and I were talking before we started recording today. These 4 categories of things they're all in our head. They're inner barriers. And you were telling me that there are also external barriers that can knock us out of levels 5 and 6. And I wonder if today we could talk about those more. Can you give us a bit of an introduction to those?
Sure. Yeah. So last time as we talked about the inner barriers, the inner blocks that show up, and as you said, it is what's going on in our mind. It's shutting us down from taking action or getting us ready to fight. And so sometimes when it's in our mind, it's harder to really get our fingers on or get a grip on. The external blocks are those that are a lot easier to see. I want to say a little bit easier to blame for why we haven't taken action or why we haven't accomplished our goal or why we haven't gotten to the point we want to get to in our career or in the relationship or whatever it is we're up to. So the external blocks are things that show up that are outside of us, that feel out of our control. So, for example, in business situations, external blocks can be things like the economy or the customer strategy has changed and it no longer includes us, right? It could be a new competitor entered the marketplace. It could be a patent expired and now it's a free-for-all. So there's many things that occur. It could be regulations that lawmakers put in place that feel like you don't have any choice or option to come up with your product meeting that particular regulation. So there's a lot of what I call excuses of why we don't live the kind of life we want to live, why we don't achieve what we want to achieve in our business. Why our careers are not as far along or advanced as we would have liked them. And those a lot of times come from some of those external beliefs, those external barriers that are feeling like they're outside of us. They're not made up in our head. It's true the customer changed their strategy. It's true the economy, has declined into a recession. It's true that law was put in place and limits what our product can do in the marketplace. So it looks like it's true. It is true. And what that does is then have us not take any action or not be as creative or open-minded as to what's possible. So that's the difference a little bit between what we talked about last time with the inner barriers. Those are beliefs that get created over time. Limiting beliefs, they're assumptions, they're interpretations of a situation or event. Those are our imagination, our mind, making up versions of what's possible. External barriers are really like you can put your finger on it. You can Google it and print it out, right?
Right.
That this is true. This is what's happening. So it feels more real. It feels more like a valid excuse why we couldn't do what we say we want to do.
I think it's really helpful when you say excuses in terms of understanding what you mean by external barriers or external blocks. It's something outside of me or my mind that I can point to and I can say, it's not something I'm believing in my head. We really are in a recession. Here are the numbers.
Exactly. And a lot of times I hear from clients, well, we don't have the budget for that. A lot of times it has to do with money. We don't have the money for that. We don't have the budget for that. So there's nothing we can do about it. And I'll question that. I'll kind of push them a little bit, the client, and I'll say, well, really, how true is that? Well, it's true. My boss only has so much they can spend. And this training or this additional headcount or this additional test that we're going to run for the product, it's not in the current budget. See, I can show it to you. It's not in here.
Right.
And so what happens is it shuts people down. It shuts that individual down from thinking outside the box, getting more creative, thinking of another option, another alternative, and so it holds them back from being their high performing self, from being their most powerful self. And what it does is it takes them out of that ownership state that we talk about, right? It takes them out of the mindset that they can control what happens in their world, that they are able to create what they want, which is level 7 energy. And it brings them down to level 1 victim energy where it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do.
Right. Can you talk a little bit more about this in terms of the 7 levels of energy and how it relates there?
Sure. So as we've discussed before, the ideal state that I talk to clients about when I'm coaching them inside companies and on teams is really hanging out mostly in level 5, true partnership energy with each other, with the customer, with their boss. So the idea is that they spend as much time as possible up in the level 5, even level 6, where they can really see the bigger picture, see how it all kind of ties together. And then tapping into their level 7, which is their real creative, sheer brilliant state, where everything is moving and flowing, almost like time is standing still. So that's optimal in relationships, in business, for a person to feel really satisfied and fulfilled with what's going on for them. And so what takes us out of that, which is, again, our natural state, which takes us out of that is what goes on in the head, the beliefs that we get attached to, or experiences that we've had that have us then believing it's going to happen again. So we're going to get ready for that, and that might mean get ready to fight, or it might mean I'm not even going to open my mouth because last time, I had a bad reaction from them, or we create a story around it. And then the outer blocks that may show up that take us down into level 1 to not even try. We don't have a budget. So I'm not even going to ask my boss for approval because there's no budget. We can't get the head count. So I'm not even going to agree to take on that project because there's no resource. There's nobody to work on it. So immediately we're coming down to our level 1. We've dropped out of level 6 visionary, what else is possible, there's got to be another way, looking at the bigger picture, there's always money flowing, where else can we find money that somebody's not using that we can redirect here, right? That would be level 6 thinking,
right,
in that scenario. And when we allow the outer blocks or the inner blocks that we talked about last time take hold and see them as true, then it takes us out of that level 6 creative space or even level 5, all right, how can we really make this work for both of us? Down to level 1, no action, no engagement, given up, I'm helpless. Or level 2, where you get forceful and you fight for the budget and you go to your boss and you slam the door and you say, look, we need headcount. We have to get this project going. We need resources, and so your approach is very maybe short-term productive, but it alienates people, it drains you, it's not healthy for a productive business model long-term. So that's how they relate to each other. That's how they are intertwined, I would say.
Yeah. So instead of being in level 6 and seeing possibilities with things, you see one of these external barriers. We don't have the right people. The economy's not right. Our patent expired. The regulations are too onerous. And instead of seeing possibilities, being a visionary, you just don't do anything. Or
exactly.
Instead of partnering with people in level 5, you go into different situations ready to fight with them.
You got it. That's exactly how the scenarios play out in real life. I've seen it time and time again. And when I work with clients on this, we really we recreate these scenarios, right? Because they just happened to them yesterday with the customer, or it just happened to them with their wife or husband this morning when they left the house, right? So it's showing up constantly in different points throughout the day that take us out of our level 5, level 6 possibility of engaging down to a less productive way of engaging or disengaging totally, which is level 1.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, right? We're here to live life fully, to enjoy it, to create, beautiful memories and create experiences that are wonderful for everyone involved. And to have successful businesses and to enjoy the career that you choose to pursue. I know that's what I'm here for. And I've been in the situation where I've been on autopilot, where when we talk about in my book Slowing Down, where I'm just going through the motions. And instead of really slowing down to say, well, wait a minute, how's this working for me? When I have the excuse, I'll say, that the economy has tanked. So I'm not going to hit my sales numbers this year, and I'm not going to get a bonus, so that means I can't do the vacation I plan to do. It's like a snowball effect. And before, I would really believe that was true, so I wouldn't, I would just give up. Now I know how to slow down, really ask myself, okay, how true is that really? And that's what I help clients see. They can always just put a little space in between what's going on, my belief about it, and what I want to do about it, if anything.
Yeah.
And that's the slowing down part. That's when we can question what's really true here. And I just had a client this morning where I worked on this with him. And it was really, he was believing something, in this case about his wife. And we really questioned it and worked through it. And he started to see, well, actually it's not true. And he started to see that, he was coming home every night having this assumption and making up stories of what happened, that he would start attacking. And this happened frequently. So of course, to him, it's what's true over time. And as we questioned it and really, slowed it down for him to let his thinking settle, he started to see, well, wait a minute, I'm really aggressive. I'm really not kind. No wonder she doesn't want to engage with me. No wonder, she's shutting down.
Yeah.
I would too if I were her. So it's really beautiful when and he even said to me, he goes, okay, I've been working on all this at the office, And I've gotten really good at questioning these beliefs and these barriers in the office. But I haven't done it as well at home because I thought it was different.
Yeah.
And what he's finding is it's not. These barriers, these blocks that show up for us, both external ones and internal ones, are both, in personal and professional parts of our lives. And they're just, as we said, intertwined with each other. And it's recognizing them and questioning them sooner, not faster, but being able to slow down, paradoxically slowing down to question them before they become real, before they have happened enough times that you believe that they're true.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea, that you learn how to really just slow down to question it in that moment. So you can take away the power of it and then choose, okay, what would be a more productive way to move forward?
Yeah. That's really good. I'm glad you brought in that kind of overarching context of slowing down, which is the theme of your book, because it seems like the application of all the things we've been talking about in this series of podcasts is to sit down and slow down and use the 7 levels of energy and use what you're learning about the different kinds of barriers and apply that. And I like how you brought out the breadth of the application. It's not just in the business world, in our professional life, even though that's where most of our illustrations have come from, but it also applies to our personal life, may even turn a marriage around, and that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And as you said, it's slowing down, not just physically, which is also helpful, but slowing down the thinking, slowing down the runaway train in your head of what's going on. And it's really a practice. It's that awareness that you continuously increase for yourself, that takes ownership of what's going on for you. How I mentioned earlier that, I used to be on autopilot. Mm-hmm. And I used to just go through the motions. And that's a sped up mind. That's not a slowed down way of living. That's just doing what needs to get done, just to get it done. Mm-hmm. And so what we talk about here together and what I talk about in the book is really a way of being that is more effective. So really you get more done in less time. Mm-hmm. So it seems like, you're moving along faster. You're actually just incredibly more productive and powerful in a shorter period of time because you're not letting yourself get pulled off track and distracted with these barriers and these blocks for any length of time. You're able to come back quicker. It doesn't mean you won't have them. They are going to show up.
You're not wasting time
Correct.
In level 1 doing nothing when you could be doing something. And you're not wasting your time fighting with people when you could be partnering with them.
Exactly. And because those 2 levels of energy are so draining, what happens is you're not effective at all through the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Right? You're always behind the 8 ball, always behind, what's going on. And it just feels like you never have enough time in the day. Now you're fighting with time, right? And then you get self-critical and frustrated with yourself because you didn't get done everything you wanted to get done. Mm-hmm. So then you carry it home with you. And you may take it out as you walk through the door on the kids or your wife or your husband, right? Who knows? It's just like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
So it's really useful the more you can spot these barriers, the sooner you can see it for what it is and that it's not real, that it's not true, that you really can come up with an alternative possibility to move forward.
Sure.
And find the money or find another way to introduce your product in the market that would still meet the legal requirements of that particular country. It's really, I know it sounds cliche, but really anything is possible. Everything is possible. It may not look like it in that moment. And the more you can get familiar with the 7 levels and what kind of energy am I bringing to this, how open am I, how much of a partner am I being in this moment with this person, what's in my way, what do I believe is in my way, how true is that? The more you're going to dance with life, the more enjoyment you're going to get out of everything you do. It's really, and I'm practicing it myself, right? I'm learning it and living it every day more and more, and it's really amazing.
Awesome. Help us round out this discussion of the outer barriers or the excuses. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a couple of illustrations or scenarios just to help us learn to recognize this kind of obstacle?
Yeah, so I have one that came up with a client, and I was with a group. I was coaching, over a period of 6 months, and so we had worked together for a couple sessions, and one of the participants said, "Well, I have a couple guys that I need to send to Germany to get trained, and I don't have the budget to pay for the training, so we haven't been able to offer the customer this new product design because we haven't been able to get these particular associates over to Germany for this specialized training." Mm-hmm. And so the guy was really frustrated because he felt like he was letting his team down. He felt like he was letting these associates down. They were frustrated because they couldn't do their jobs effectively. He felt as the leader of the team that he was powerless, that he couldn't do anything to get the budget together to get them over to Germany trained. It was really, tough to watch him with that belief that he was holding on to. And so I asked him, I said, "Well, what's so special about this training? Is there other options? Is there other, offerings here closer to home that won't cost as much money?" And he's like, "No, it really is only in this one location in Germany. It's very highly specialized and, specific." I said, "Okay." And that's what's true. As of now, given that it truly is this specialized training. I said, "Okay, so where else would there be money in the budget that you haven't used yet that you could allocate and do?" He's like, I'm all out. I don't have any. I've gone to my boss. He won't free up any more funds. There's no option. And in the room, there were other participants from other departments in the company. Mm-hmm. And because they benefit from these associates getting trained, they raised their hand and told this engineering leader, "We'll give you the money because we want them trained. We have money in our budget. We'll get it to you because it would help us if you get those guys trained sooner rather than later because we want to take that product to the customer and sell it." Mm-hmm. And he was flabbergasted, the engineering man. He's like, "What, really?" And like, "Yeah, absolutely." And that's what became really clear for all of them, that was level 5, level 6 energy showing up, right, from those guys. Like, well, wait a minute. We got to make this good for all of us because, we benefit. We win, too, if these guys get trained. You win as a leader of them by getting them trained because that's what they want. They'll be more satisfied with the work that they're doing. Their morale will be improved. And then we all benefit. So it was really a powerful way to see that even though that external block was really strong, he felt he had done everything about it. He had gone to his boss and asked for, money. He, tried to find other trainings. There's nothing. It's really specialized. I mean, he had really worked it. And to him, he was convinced there's no other way.
Yeah.
And it was just beautiful. And you could say, okay, well, that was coincidental that those guys were in the room. No, that's how it works. There's always an idea.
Yeah.
Always. As long as you're asking, you're open to it.
Right.
And you're asking, you're talking about it with other people, then there's always ideas that will get generated. That's just our natural level 6 idea, creative right side of the brain that we all have.
Right. So the level 6 visionary looks for ways to partner with people in level 5 in order to achieve a common goal, rather than falling down to level 1 to give up.
Yeah, and it was really that, the human being, all of us human beings have that compassion in us. And that's also what got hit with that story, because the engineering manager, he was just hurting. He was like, I'm out of options.
Yeah.
There's nothing else I can do. And his colleagues in the room were like, oh man, this doesn't feel good to watch this guy suffer. So their level 4 kicked in, right?
Yeah.
And because their level 4 kicked in, they were able to be up in the level 4, 5, 6 space.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ideas started flowing, because they didn't stay down in level 1 with him.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, man, you're screwed. There's nothing else you can do. Instead, their natural capacity as a human, their compassion kicked in. Like, wait a minute, how can I help this guy? And then it moved into, well, actually, it would be beneficial to me too, which is going from a 4 to a 5, right?
Yeah.
If I could help him. So then we both win. And then it gets into level 6 from a level 5 to, okay, well, this is an idea. We have money. We can just transfer it over to them.
That's a great illustration. I think a lot of the scenarios that we've talked about in the last couple of podcasts have been very much focused on us as individuals, but this one shows how these energy levels work within group dynamics.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch it, unfold right in front of my eyes, and it's true. It happens over and over. That's one example. I have so many that are just so much fun to continue to see play out. It's beautiful.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one more illustration. Can you give us one more example?
Yeah, I think a big one for salespeople tends to be something from the customer outside of them. The customer's made a decision. So I have another client who, the customer changed direction and decided to no longer give this particular company I'm working with business. And, that happens. They had a change in their direction. The customer decided they're going to work with a different supplier. And so, all of a sudden, the business growth opportunities are limited, mm-hmm. according to what my client is believing, right? And on the surface, that can seem true. If you're looking at from an external perspective, yeah, the customer, they're out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. And so it seems pretty helpless at that point, and pretty hopeless, mm-hmm. that there's no way we're going to meet our sales goals this year. So what ended up happening as we worked together on it, I just started to question it with him, started to open him up a little bit and see if he could see what else is possible given the change in direction of the customer. And after, a bit of time and some slowing down to really get some clarity on, all right, what really is true here? What else is possible? And what he found was, okay, the customer changed direction in North America, but there's still China and Europe and South America and other parts of Asia as opportunities for growth. And they can fill the void that this change in North America has created. And before, it was just, the budget was created with, okay, this is how much in North America, this is how much in Europe, etc. Well, okay, it changed. So let's get some other ideas going of these other regions and markets and that you haven't explored yet, because you didn't need to, because you had the growth in North America already taken care of.
Right.
And so once it's becomes more of a want to, all right, now I really want to explore more, then the mind opens up and you start to see, all right, it's not true that there's nothing we can do. There's pockets that we haven't explored yet because we didn't need to. We had enough to manage.
Yeah. And
now we're going to have freed up resources that we can redirect into the China market to grow the business there. And, oh, by the way, it's going to be more profitable for us. How about that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really amazing what ends up happening. And sometimes those barriers, those external blocks become a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Great. It seems like to a certain extent we can learn to slow down in this kind of way and apply it just on our own. And then in some instances we're working in a group, and as a group we can apply it. But I was just thinking as you were going through that illustration that sometimes it would be really helpful to have a coach to kind of play the role that a group might play, where you're sitting down with your client and he's out of ideas, but as a coach, you can help him to break through some of the barriers.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the one benefit that I have working with my coach, because I also get stuck in these beliefs and these barriers. Mm-hmm. Just the other day, I called my coach and said, "Hey, can we have a quick session? I need some help with this." Because I was really stuck. I was really believing there was nothing I could do in this particular scenario. Mm-hmm. And that has been what I've come to realize, the power of coaching and the benefit of having a coach is the ability to have someone to talk through what's going on, and they are a neutral person. They don't have the emotional charge behind it. They don't have the attachment to the result that you have. So you're right, even in a team dynamic, the whole team still has the desire to achieve the goal. So it can be easy to get swirled up in the emotional drama of what the customer's doing or what the economy's doing, mm-hmm. and not break out of it because you're a part of that, right? And working with a coach who's neutral, who's that unbiased, non-judgmental person, can help clear up your thinking, can help you slow down your thinking to get more clarity, to get more ideas, to have someone to bounce off. And you don't have to worry about whether your coach thinks you know what you're doing or not. It doesn't matter to your coach.
Yeah.
And sometimes in companies, you don't want to show that you don't know what the right next step is or a next step is. Mm-hmm. So that's where coaching can really benefit each individual inside a company to really be high performing and stay in that level 5, level 6 space as often as possible.
Yeah. Well, Sherry, I think we're out of time for today. I've really appreciated this discussion in our previous podcast and in this podcast about the internal blocks that we have and the external blocks or excuses that we make that prevent us from hanging out in level 5 as a partner, or level 6 as a visionary, or even as a creator in level 7. And I'm looking forward in our future podcasts. I think we're going to be getting into some more scenarios and really getting into how all of these things interplay. We move between the different levels of energy, and we may move from excuses into beliefs and assumptions. We're not machines. All of these things are interwoven and at play with each other because we're human beings.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a really good discussion. This, I think, is really powerful stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Phil.
And thank you also for listening. Please join us again next time for Sherry Welsh Today. This is Phil Johnson.